Hello again, guys. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie. I am Charlie, and in this video, we're talking about something entertaining and fun, which is how to offer, or more specifically, how to not overpay when buying a property. Now, before I start, I want to say that first of all, this is my opinion on the pricing of properties, because I am here to represent the best interests of movers. And of course, if you're a mover, you might be a buyer or a seller, or you might be both. And my view is that every property has its market price. And if you follow these rules, you'll find it. And buying or selling at the market price is not bad. That's a good thing. You shouldn't, especially when you're talking about buying or selling a home, you shouldn't worry too much about profit margins. That's only for developers and investors to worry about, okay? You need to worry about getting out of one home and into the other, or into your first home, or out of the home you need to sell. So to start with, you should always approach these transactions with, I'm prepared to pay fair market price. But the question is, how do you find fair market price, especially in a falling market if you're a buyer? Okay. If you are, and this video is especially for people who are first-time buyers, they know that prices are very high, the market's very toppy, and there's a chance of prices dropping and therefore a risk of negative equity, but you still want to move anyway, because perhaps you're squeezed in with your in-laws and you've got a new baby and you just need to get out of there into your own home, and I get that. And that is more important than waiting for a better price, okay? So, but if you are in that category of first-time buyer that needs to move despite prices being very high because you're taking a long-term view and you're confident that you can afford the mortgage payments and therefore avoid negative equity, then this advice is really for you. How to not overpay in a high and falling market. Okay. With every property that you come across, there will be one of two scenarios as a buyer, okay? And this will really simplify things for you. Either that property will have competing buyers and you'll be one of many buyers trying to buy that property, which has one approach, or you're the only buyer for that property and there are no other offers on it, and that's a different approach, okay? So let's just deal with the first scenario first, okay? Where there are more than one competing buyer. Now, first of all, I would say this. If you have not fallen in love with that property, if it is not the home of your dreams and there are competing buyers, walk away. Because if there are competing buyers, you're going to end up having to pay a very high price, which is okay, but only if it's your dream home, okay? It's not okay to end up paying a very high price for a home that you don't love, okay? Just trust me on that. We could do a whole other video on that topic, but trust me on that, okay? But if it is a home that you have truly fallen in love with and getting or securing that home is of a higher priority to you than how much you pay for it, then you're into that bidding scenario where you're bidding against other buyers, okay? And you're going to be paying the highest price for that property. But again, if you fall in love with it and you need a home, that's okay, as long as you can afford the mortgage and ride out a price downturn and wait for the prices to come back. So let's start with that scenario, because for a lot of people, I know that's still the scenario, right? Lots of competing buyers on a first home. So if it is your dream home and you have fallen in love with it and you've got the finances in place and you can afford it and you know you can afford the mortgage payments, even if there's a downturn, even if there's a recession, and you're up against other buyers, then the question you have to ask yourself is, will we kick ourselves if we lose this property because we tried to save a few thousand quid? Or, alternatively, same question, word in a different way, what is the maximum price that we can actually afford to pay and be prepared to pay for this property? In that scenario, if you're in a sealed bid situation, it's a nightmare because you don't know what other people are offering. And in that sealed bid scenario, which by the way is the agent doing their job well, okay, that is an agent doing an excellent job for their client, the seller, because the agent's job is to find out what is the highest price the property can get. And with competing buyers, you're in an auction. one day you'll be the seller and you'll be in that position. But if you're the buyer and you're competing with other people and you fall in love with the property, you're not going to get it cheap. And if you don't want to lose out, you've got to go in there and go, we're prepared to pay a premium to secure this property. Okay, so you fall in love with it and there are competing buyers, be prepared to pay a premium. If you fall in love with it and there are no competing buyers, well then, and that will increasingly become the case the longer you wait in a falling market, then it's a different scenario. That's when you say to the agent, have there been any offers on the property? What were the offers? Why were they rejected? And you need to look at the asking price. You need to look at similar properties and what they're going for. And that is a scenario in which you can make a low offer, because if no one else is offering on that property, why not? There's usually a drawback with the property. Now, I have fallen in love with crappy properties before and bought them and been glad I did. But if you've got no competitors, then you can go with a low-ish offer. And you can just leave it there. And normally what will happen with a lowish offer is they'll say no, and you'll say, never mind, we'll leave it on the table. Call us if you change your mind. And if the market continues to fall, they might be willing to consider your offer. Now, how much do you offer? Bearing in mind that most transactions are taking 5 to 6 months to complete, you need to be asking yourself, where is the market price for that property going to be 6 months from now? That's a difficult thing to do. Because if you don't do that and you pay too much, you're going to want to lower it later, and then you might lose it if you might upset the vendor and they just don't want to deal with it anymore. So if you're the only buyer, take a view. I can't tell you what percentage to offer under, because that depends on the local marketplace, and the vendor might offer you. Because if it's a property that's not selling, the agent will want to sell it, and they may well give you an indication of what price the vendor will accept. But you can still offer lower than that. There's no harm. If you're the only offer, that's when sometimes you can get lucky. My first ever flat that I bought was in Brighton. It was 1994 or 5, and it had been sitting on the market for £35,000. I know it sounds unbelievable, but it was £35,000 for a long time. And I came along and offered £23,500 because that's all I could afford. And I got it. That was 30% below asking price. And 1995 was the end of a long property market downturn. So those are a couple of scenarios. If it's a property you're not in love with, and by the way, I keep saying, are you in love with it or not? Because it makes a difference, right? If you can get into the home you're in love with, it's a life-changing benefit. It's just fantastic. And provided you can afford to get in there, just get in there, because it's so lovely compared to being in a home that you don't love. Being in a home that you don't love, you resent every penny you're spending on it. You just don't like it. It's like, you form a relationship with a home. If you've never bought your own home before, it's worth knowing this. You will form a relationship. Your home will be a living, breathing character in your life. Okay? An expensive character in your life. But if you love that character, you'll be happy spending money on it. And if you don't love that character, you'll hate spending money on it. But if you need to find a home and you can't find anywhere you're in love with, and you end up offering on something you're not in love with, just factor that in, okay? Because if you get it cheap, then maybe you'll love it anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's like, well, didn't love you, but I got you so cheap that actually I'm really happy because we're in a home for less than we thought, and that's worth loving. Have I covered the other scenarios? Okay, the other thing is that you must be patient. If you want to get a good price and you don't think there are other competing offers, just be patient. And when you've made your offer, leave it with the agent, walk away, don't chase them up, wait for them to come back to you. And if you're the only offer, they will come back to you. Just give it time. Okay? So, let me recap briefly. You're in love with the property, but there are competing buyers. You're going to be paying top price to secure that property, which is okay if you're in love with it and you need a home, as long as you're confident that you can ride out a property price downturn and stay in there long enough for the price to come back. Scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, you're in love with it and there are no other people offering. You can put a cheeky offer in, be patient, wait for the reply. But always the best scenario for you to be in as a buyer is to find 2 properties that you like equally, harder than it sounds to do, but it can be done, so that when you offer on one, you can truthfully say to the agent, if we don't get this one, we're going to buy that one. Okay? Because then the agent will say to the vendor, they've got another property they like, and if you don't accept their offer, they're going to buy that one. And if the vendor wants to sell, and there are no other buyers around, they'll be more motivated to take your offer if they think correctly, because you're telling the truth, that you found somewhere else. And by the way, here's a tip, guys. Don't lie to agents. They do this all day, every day for a living. They've seen and heard all of the bullshit, okay? Just be truthful, because if you're truthful with the agent, they will respect you more as a buyer, because everyone lies to them. There's a phrase in estate agency, which is buyers are liars, okay? They're expecting you to lie to them, and they've heard it all before. So if you want to be taken seriously, don't lie to them. And if you don't lie to them, and they can feel you're being really honest with them, they're going to respect you for it, and it's going to put you in a better position as a buyer if an agent trusts you. So I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover on that. And that approach pretty much applies to whatever kind of property you're buying. And I'll do a separate video on how to sell in a falling market. But most of all, if you're selling, it's about the agent that you choose. Guys, thank you for watching. Please give me your feedback. I'd really love to know if you thought that was helpful or not. And if I've left anything out and you've got questions, hit me up for the questions, okay? Publicly in the comments or privately on direct message on social media. Follow me on Twitter, moving_Charlie, or any of the other channels, Moving Home with Charlie. You'll find me, okay? Thanks for watching. Best of luck. If you can wait, I would. If you can't wait, follow my tips and you'll be okay. All the best, guys. Find a way to keep having fun, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye. My mother gave me this mug, and I thought, oh, and then I realized that she'd given it to all of my siblings as well.